Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome back to another episode of Influencers Radio. Today, my guest is an entrepreneur. He's a highly respected strategist and speaker on growing and scaling businesses. And he's also the best-selling author of The Best Investment, A Better You. Vinnie Fisher, I'd like to welcome you to Influencers Radio.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me today.
Well, here's what, as much as you have you've done so many things that, more than people would think about, putting together in a lifetime that you've accomplished sometimes in less than a year. But the book, The Best Investment, A Better You, is what I really want to dig in today, because this deals with, I guess, what you would call the other side of success. I think of a saying about, it's not the $1 million that makes a man wealthy. It's becoming the man that is able to travel the peaks and valleys on the road to that $1 million that really makes a person wealthy. And in the book, you set it up so well and relatable to just about anyone that calls themselves an entrepreneur today. To start off, you set up with, you'd gone through a sale of your business, went on vacation, getting recharged to take on the big opportunities that you seem to find so well. But when you returned, it's pow, you got the wind knocked out of those sales, quickly. Let's start there.
Yeah, always start with the fun stuff, right? Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I'll tell you, Jack, one of the reasons that the inspiration behind my life starts with situations like that. Like I've just been truly blessed to endure through big trials, hardships like that. I don't think we want those. I think we grow through them. And I think the promise is that we're going to have them. And it's how we deal with them. And so that day, I remember it like it was yesterday. It literally did knock the wind out of my sails. And I had some choices to make. And right away, I don't think I made the greatest choices because I would have been like everyone else. I would have been so worried with the disruption, the loss, and the fear of exposed failure that it started a journey for me. It started a journey of working my way out of that and expressing the fact I had to get comfortable with one big thing. I think I spoke about this a few times in my book, and this idea that failure is something expected. It's how you deal with it, not whether you have it or not.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, and I think that's why it rings true to anyone that's an entrepreneur and been in any entrepreneur pursuits. They face that, and one of the things that I think you really helped, that I understood and saw that the theme through the book was the core of being able to work through these things is the taking ownership. You talk about how we are in charge of our beliefs. We may not be in charge of what other people believe about us or think about us, but we are in charge of whether or not we believe those. So, would you say that that's probably the first step in investing in this better investment of you is to take ownership and stop trying to find, where to point the finger or reasons or explanations?
I've had a lot of success in business, and I've been definitely accused of being a very good marketer. And we market things that are ease, speed and automation, lifestyle, and we paint these pictures of how things are easy to obtain. And we really gloss over and dangerously avoid a real discussion, and that discussion is one that has to happen over being active and taking ownership. And for me, it starts with answering yes to your question of take ownership of the way you choose to think about things, and not even external things. Take ownership of the way you choose to look at the talents and gifts you have. Do you see yourself through the lens of your failures or the opportunities in front of you and the blessings and talents that you truly have to offer the world? It's that part right there, taking ownership of that, I think starts a road towards overall success, and not just wealth, but success in all areas of your life.
Yeah, and I think that's where, why at the top of the show when I talk about the other side of success, because so many people, they kind of pigeonhole success into dollars and cents, and kind of what you have. And this is about that other side that, that to be able to enjoy that or be the person that gets that, you got to take care of these other these other areas. And it's interesting, you brought up about that lens that you look through, because another segment in the book that you talk about that I thought was really, really interesting is what you call life ceiling. And one of the things, and a lot of people look for it's black or white, right? You either believe and that you can do everything, or you have that, you're humble about it. But you seem to be able to reconcile the virtue of humility without limiting your potential. And I think that's a conflict with a lot of people.
You are going to be a sum of your accomplishments are going to be all based on the rate limiting factor of what you choose to set that point at. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say in prosperity that if you believe it, it'll happen, because it requires effort and it requires work. But if you don't have a positive or an outlook or a belief that you can achieve more, then you have virtually put yourself in a position of not achieving anything. So that ceiling is one that you have the ability to create its height. And so what I would encourage someone is to actually push through that ceiling. And we have so many things in our life have dictated where the height of that ceiling is. All the external influences. We can do it to ourselves. We don't have to blame outside forces. But we set the height of that ceiling. And I go on to say, and I say this in my life to my children, to my colleagues in business, that we just need to understand where we've placed that ceiling and either break through it or make it a higher one.
Yeah, and the way you talk about this is just really compelling, and the way that you write, the sense, the flow of this, the conversation, it's almost like your people are walking along with you, because it's, even though there may not be the exact same circumstances, there's something that they can replace almost every every story that you have, they can replace that parallel, that you use. And one of the things when it got to, I thought, when you talked about positive thinking, right? And that is how important that is. And we all see that positive thinking is important and it's undeniable. But what a lot of folks neglect or might not consider are the consequences of negative thinking. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because you actually go through, some line items of very concrete consequences of negative thinking. And while you should think, be positive and think positive, it's not just a positive, argument. There's some definite consequences of the negative side. Can you talk about those and kind of how you went through those and pulled yourself out of those?
Yeah, and so Jack, I want to comment about two things. You brought up this idea of relating to the book. And so I've had the great pleasure of a number of people having had the opportunity to read the book. And I get countless emails and stories back of people thanking us that they're reading this book at the exact time that they're going through some issue with teenage pregnancy of their daughter or a marriage breakup. It doesn't all have to be business stuff, and people are relating back, because that's my story. It's my life. It's the actual story that people can grab onto. They're attainable. And so I think that relationship allows you to filter your own version of life through some of those real world opportunities to change that. And so one of them is negative thoughts. So you can choose. The world around us, the news, the things that, you look to for either entertainment, all these opportunities we have to take knowledge in has a choice of allowing us to think positively or negatively. And we don't even need to actually necessarily blame all the external forces, but boy, the deluge of that coming into our lives offers so many opportunities. So what I would proffer is, and I did in the book, is when you allow more negative than positive thoughts in your life, you're going to have a spiraling effect. You're not going to be heading in an upward motion. You're going to be heading in a downward motion. When I was experiencing some of those trials in my life, I really did have health issues. I had anxiety. I had, of broken relationships, because you're in this dark moment where your mind can't see the glory of life. It's too busy worrying about protecting itself. We have this idea and vision of something we want, only to be trapped in our own mind because of our fear of moving. And so we can learn a lot of things, and I often say that knowledge without action is just awareness. That knowledge plus action is what equals progress. And so when we have more positive thoughts than negative thoughts, we're likely to proceed in a forward placement moving instead of backwards.
And I'm glad you did talk about the distinction that, it's not about business. I know when I first saw the book and I saw, where it talks about the best investment, it kind of drew me to business and especially with your reputation and what you've done with businesses and how you grow businesses. But, if we circle back around to the way you set this book up, it really was because of the circumstances that you found yourself in with the sale of this company and the consequences, when you get back and all of a sudden you're in this legal web. It wasn't a kind of fight or flight strictly on, financial or business. You actually started asking yourself some questions that had nothing to do with business of, am I who I want to be? Talk about some of those questions that it really hit you, because that was very powerful up front where, and some very tough questions to ask yourself.
Jack, when you start chasing things in life that looked attractive at the time that you made the decision to go after them, it's funny when you gain some perspective later as to whether or not those decisions made any sense. And quite often chasing money can be one of those. But it's also true of, entertainment. If I go out and celebrate and have fun with friends, and does that all of a sudden turn into excessive partying? Or, if I have to make myself look better to other people and I start telling stories that prop myself up, well, eventually I'm going to start to exaggerate and make myself look better than I really am. In areas of our life, we start serving this intention to look better than we really are, or want something more than we really need. And when I was exposed to this idea of our business and all of its things that happened to it, I sat there and I thought, well, how the heck did I get here? And in that conclusion, it started with, there were some real attacks on the character and integrity of the decisions I was making. Whether those were grounded in things that really defined me or things I was just chasing that really didn't define me.
Yeah, and it's something that I didn't actually see the words, but it kept coming back to me and making me realize how the root of a lot of people's fears, and there are people that think they are just, have backed themselves in a corner that are nowhere near, the numbers are what people could even conceive that you were in, but it all comes down to a lot of times, what will people think?
Yeah, I think a fear of failure is being exposed. This idea that, you put yourself in such a propped up position, so you have this fear of fraudulence. I experienced that even in just writing the book itself. I'm going to put words down on paper and stand behind those words for the test of time. And this funny feeling that goes through you that you can choose to stay in or move out and get out of you quickly is this idea of the fear of what other people are going to think about you. Are you for real or are you a fraud? And that fear of failure wrapped in with that fear of fraudulence are very powerful things that could cause you to choose not to do something with your life. And so I really very strongly encourage people to fight through those emotions. And I talk about that extensively in the book, and I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah. And so, we've talked about, if people find themselves in this situation, it's there, it's what it is. And, they've come to the terms that, okay, it's time to pull myself out of this. It's time to become a different person. It's time to invest in me, to make a better me. And a powerful theme in the book is the concept of pursuit, not perfection. And you just use a term, called progress. So many people struggle with this. They look at where they're starting, and then they look at their current circumstances, and then they look at that ultimate outcome that they hope to achieve. And sometimes it just seems the odds are insurmountable. And I thought you did an excellent job of kind of walking through that and making it a much simpler process and much easier to look at, not just jumping from this pit that I'm in to where I really feel I need to be. Talk about how you've dealt with that.
Yeah. So, in life, we have these conscious decisions that we make that we want to go do something. And, our mind, the way it's designed, we get very quickly excited about wanting to do something. But then when reality sets in, we start doing the math, right? The math of what we have to do to get that to come to fruition. And so, when you think about starting a business, you have this idea of some value proposition you want to offer to the world. And you want to create this wonderful little business. And then you start thinking about all the things you have to do to create the business. And I always say, what works for me is to put it into smaller chunks. Okay, so maybe today I'm just going to go get parts of my business plan started, or I'm going to go get a business card created. Like taking those initial steps. So in the writing of this book, creating the cover was a significant step because it actually started to show this pursuit, progress, movement. And your brain is functioning in such a way that if it doesn't actually see some progress, it gets overwhelmed at the result, and we get I always joke with my wife, it's like deer in headlights syndrome, where you don't move, you're frozen. Because it seems so overwhelming what the final result looks like. And I constantly encourage, you used the word business strategist earlier. In my life, I have wonderful opportunities to help people who are thinking about this. And I always say, do something today. Call me back, email me, text me that you moved one step towards that thing you want to do. And I'll tell you that step, is that giant step for mankind step is huge. That first step is amazingly powerful. So I'm always encouraging, take some progress. And so why is there no perfection? Because you don't know what you're doing. You're in your rookie season at all times when you're trying something new. And so we get real concerned that we don't know enough. But just taking the steps every day, you amazingly work much closer to being an expert, and you're that much closer to actually materializing whatever value you want to offer back to the world.
Yeah, and it really is. And the fact that I think that progress part is what a lot of people miss, when it comes to anything in business and, all the way down to people, weight loss, a lot of times they get discouraged because they just see that where I'm starting, where I want to be. And man, that's going to be a lot. But I think people probably do see how that progress, most people that have done any kind of weight loss can see that, that progress does breed, it breeds success because it breeds confidence that they're doing the right thing. And since I talk about weight loss here for you,
yeah, you're right. So you're right, Jack. So I had this idea where I wanted to have a better, healthier lifestyle, and then so I knew in my mind I wanted to lose 20 pounds. And so what's overwhelming is if you start with this proposition of wanting to lose 20 pounds, it sounds like a lot. I mean, especially if 20 pounds is most of the weight you need to lose. So really, as soon as I started thinking about it in increments of 5 pounds or 1 pound, something smaller, it seemed much more attainable. And so then the funniest thing happens in that process. You move, right? We're talking about movement. You make progress. Well, it starts building on itself because you get motivated, right? Well, if I can lose 2, I can lose 3 pounds. And if I can lose 5, I certainly can lose 10. 20 suddenly becomes less intimidating when you break it into chunks. I also talked about in the book something that, I think is powerful here that needs to be addressed. And I've had multiple people reach out to me about this. It's this idea of if I didn't hit 20 pounds. There's something dangerous here. So I talked about this in the book where I got to 18 pounds within the period of time that I wanted to lose 20. And so your mind, if it's set on that goal, would look at the gap or the failure between 18 and 20 pounds and say, I didn't hit my goal. Instead of stopping and celebrating the success of actually losing 18 pounds and having a better lifestyle. And this happens to even entrepreneurs, parents, of their children to come out close, but not exactly how you want them to. Life with a relationship, it comes close, but it's not exactly there. We have this kind of like loss or gap that we didn't hit our goal. That's actually as dangerous at times as no progress at all because we've taken no room for gratefulness or celebration that we've made movement. So to me, progress is the biggest of wins, because ultimately you'll reach the goal if you don't give up. But we could get to this point where we get to a plateau or a stage, and we still are threatened with giving up because we haven't reached it. And my encouragement to the world is don't give up. Keep making progress. Pursue. The goal might have stretched out a little longer, but if you keep going, you'll get there.
Yeah, and you said about being grateful for where how far you have come, and I believe it's chapter 6 titled "Give First," is where you talk about the gratitude attitude. And I want you to kind of outline, what is it that makes this so powerful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I tell you, this is probably something right near the top of my passion meter. I've had a wonderful opportunity of some business successes. We've had, as I've seen, well-documented failures, but we've done some really good things that produced wealth in our lives. But that production of the wealth, just having it in the bank account, making opportunities, it doesn't produce anything but very temporary value. And early on in my life, and we didn't talk a lot about the specific things we give because I feel like that's kind of a personal thing, but just talking in the big discussion of it, I discovered something. And we had started giving some time, effort, and money to good charitable causes. Well, in the process of giving that money, and time, because it's a valuable currency for my wife and I, we started experiencing this joy that literally pulled us out of any pit we possibly could have been in. So when I meet with somebody and they're kind of drifting, and their bank account is plus minus negative, or their life's upside down, one of the first things I tell them is go volunteer some time or go write a check to a worthy cause, and you will experience some fulfillment and joy in your life that you can't make another way.
Yeah,
that's what's powerful about this idea of having a gratitude attitude is go ahead and test yourself. Go do it. And I encourage anyone listening that you'll experience, you'll want to keep doing it because it feels that good.
Yeah, I mean, almost addictive in a way. It's not something that you got to force. It's before long, you become addicted to it, and you feel the need to do it. And I think that's just a tremendous feeling.
And by the way, that doesn't have to be charity, Jack, right? So that can be helping someone in your field of expertise. And so as a lawyer, a lot of times I might help you mentor a younger lawyer in their thinking or how they might grow their practice. Or as a businessman, I talk about being a business strategist. I can give my time to some people who might be a few years behind in the way they're doing something. That idea of giving first, I think in God's economy, that's rewarded with immense amount of blessing. And that might come in all kinds of ways, like opportunities to keep doing that, wealth, friendship, relationship, but definitely a feeling of gratitude that's matched no other way.
Yeah, and I think you're very clear that it's not about finance. It's, like you said, time, effort, money. It can be a number of ways that you are sharing that and having that gratitude and that give first.
Yeah.
We're living in a time that's very, very different than 20, 30 years ago, especially if you define the word relationship, because, so many relationships are virtual. So many relationships, even when they're not virtual, there's families that sit around and may be in the same room for 8 hours at a time and never speak to one another, right? Because of the gadgets and anything else that they have. And you talk about developing real relationships. Got to define what you're talking about, developing real relationships, because I think this right here is something that is key that we're quickly losing.
Yeah, we're so quick to network and extend our reach, which I encourage in getting to know more people and to get your message out or get your business proposition or your circle of influence. I think some healthy measure can be added to that. But if all you had was some certain of your time available, I would say all of your time should be spent on your closest relationships. And why I make that statement, and I think it's true in the world's economy, is, it's funny, I didn't really talk a lot about this in the book, but it rings true through the stories. I was a estate planning lawyer early in my days, And when you go to funerals or people's preparation, rarely did they talk about the extended relationships in their life, whether they were broken or solid. And it was always back to the closest ones. And those closest ones were either broken or not broken, invested in or not invested in. And also it was those relationships that were the ones that were most likely there as your life was ending. And so I encourage everyone to have kind of a work backwards model here, that it all starts with your closest relationships. And if you really do want a better version of yourself, first off, the more you're able to identify what a close relationship looks like, and secondly, invest most of your time there, under this kind of an 80-20 principle, if you want to go with something like that, then most of your time should be spent on the people in your life that add the most value and significance. And those are typically the closest people. You're starting with your wife, your children, your family members, your close business colleagues, your close relationship friends. And we have such a different thought process in today's environment that it's not who we know, but who knows us, right? We want to be out there and we want everyone to know us. We want our 15 minutes of fame. Well, I would challenge that type of approach could lead to a lot of people knowing you, but it could also lead to, as I talk about in the book, you may not actually have any strength or deep relationships that have any significance when you wake up and get exactly what you want.
Well, I do think that's where the culture is kind of led, where I think there's a lot of people that find themselves in that situation. And, one of the things to strengthen what you're calling real relationships, isn't just saying, okay, that's what I'm going to do. There's actually some sacrifices to be made. And one of the consequences of being known is the request for your time, the things like that. And you talk about the importance of saying no. And it seems like a simple thing to do, but it's something that many people have a very difficult time doing, but it can be one of the biggest roadblocks into strengthening those real relationships.
One of my favorite, and I think best gifts that I was given was this idea of hospitality and liking other people, inherently wanting to help others. Well, the dangerous thing that comes along with that is that inherently, because of that, you're always in a position to want to say yes. Well, I've learned through my life that the more yeses in my life don't always equate to either more sufficient relationships or even success. One of the things that we were toying around in my organization is this, since I speak of this all the time, should I write a book, No to Wealth, or, No to Your Future Success? Meaning, I encourage everyone today to think about this idea. I talk about it in the book. The more you can practice being comfortable in no, you'll see a direct correlation to focus and success. And so that starts with the relationships. The more you can say no to giving your time to the outer range of your life. I paint this picture of a dartboard where if you're throwing darts, you're aiming at a bullseye, but because we're all not inherently just great at darts, we're going to spray it all over the dartboard. Well, there's two things that happen. One is the people on the outside of those rings always want more of your time, because it's a transactional relationship. They're trying to get stuff from you. And the people on the inside of your life, the rings, don't always ask for your time, but need the most of it. So it's an amazing dichotomy of where we spray our time. And as I've gotten more wisdom in life and experienced a few trials where I really messed that up, I have to work really hard at saying no. But when I do, and as I continue to, I have seen more focus, deeper relationships, and in a business sense, an immense amount of success from developing the art of no.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, your book, The Best Investment, A Better You, one of the things that I think makes you an influencer and why I was so thrilled to be able to get you on the show is that you give real answers. You don't give easy answers. And, easy answers obviously are easy to sell, but you give real answers that do take some effort. They take really making some decisions. And you go kind of above and beyond in my eyes, where you actually have some exercises that you provide and the way that you encourage the reader as they go through and progress through the journey of the book and kind of share that journey with you is you encourage them and give them exercises to make decisions and take actions before they actually finish the book. What kind of feedback have you gotten on that piece of it?
So two real great stories jumped out to mind. The other day I heard from a woman who was telling me that her daughter has an unplanned, I always like those words, but an unplanned later age teenage pregnancy. And she was seeing all the strife and loss of what was going to happen in life. And she started reading my book before she even knew, and this is the mother who was reading the book, she started sharing the exercise, not even just the book, the exercise with her daughter. And she had to write me to tell me that taking her through these exercises of affirming what's good in her life and affirming what's good within inside of her, that she can overcome the consequences of some bad decisions, that she's already seeing a remarkable difference in her daughter's outlook and how she's going to move through this kind of new season in her life. And then literally just yesterday, I was meeting with two young gentlemen who are doing really well in the business world. And they've started attaining success, and there's this vacuum behind success where we talked earlier about these fears that can come in, the fear of loss and what's going to happen. Well, they started losing identity in themselves. And the one partner was telling me, hey, by the way, I read your book, and, I literally never gave myself permission to look at the good things in my life. And your little exercise of doing that, while it was hard, it was awkward, I can tell you, I'm so thankful that you're doing that because I'm doing it now. And he pulled out this little card where he's doing it, and it was great. It was like we literally had to stop and just love on that for a minute, because if people really do focus on this stuff, and I do it, I'm not just telling you an idea. So I then had to pull my card out and say, hey, we all have these things. We can get sideways, and I got one too. And they're like, oh my gosh, you have a card too? I think they thought for a second that I'm just telling the story and not living it with them. And so it was a great, great interaction.
That's amazing. I think you're probably developing enough stories for part 2 out of the feedback that you're getting from the book. And I will tell you, it is definitely is and will remain one of the top books for me for 2015 and beyond. It is definitely a must read. Vinnie Fisher, the best investment, a better you. How can people find out more about you, Vinnie Fisher, and about this book and get a copy of this book?
Well, great. There's a few ways. We're available on Amazon under the Best Investment, A Better You. We have a direct website, abetteryou.com. You can also find out more about me and the things we're up to at Vinnie Fisher. That's with an IE, VinnieFisher.com. And you can always reach out to us, and I'm very accessible if you're needing some direction in life as to what goes next. But VinnieFisher.com, abetteryou.com are places where you can get access to us and our materials.
Fantastic. Vinnie Fisher, I want to thank you so much for being on Influencers Radio. Just a tremendous book that you put together, and the stories and the success stories that are going to come out of that are just...
Hey, Jack, I want to take a minute and thank you for your whole listening community, your program, you allowing and helping people get out a message of value. And, even my own little example of that you have a voice and a place where people come to and listen to that. Thanks for doing that for our community, that we can get out there valuable things that are going to help people in life. And so really wishing you the greatest of success as your show continues to grow and doubles over success, and just continuing to stay driving deep value messages that people need to hear.
Well, I certainly I certainly do appreciate that. It does mean a lot, and it's what the show is all about. So, folks, there you have it. The Best Investment, A Better You, definitely a must read. You can find it at abetteryou.com, and also learn more about Vinnie Fisher at VinnieFisher.com. And until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today, or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.